Jay. Thanks for taking a deep dive with me on my daily live stream here. Um, Today is Third Pillar Thursday, one of my favorite subjects. My passion allows me to express my self-appointedness as your third pillarist for all your gaming needs. Um, Today, we're going to talk about something pretty simple. We're going to talk about rain. Let me do a little preamble first. Third pillar. All right, the first two pillars, combat, social interactions, your first and second pillar, but you need a third one to hold up that those gaming scenarios. And your third pillar is the environment, the exploration. And I'm here to tell you that it is a tool that is often underutilized, misrepresented, and in many ways ignored in a certain extent in game design sometimes. And so I'm here to tell you that it is there, and use and abuse it. So today we're going to talk about all things rain, all things leading to, during, and afterwards. One of the great things about rain is that it elicits a mood. People's behavior changes. Even if it's only on a subtle thing, people tend to want to rush from building to building. They don't want to get wet or soaked. It can, depending on how deep the rain is, if it's a torrential downpour or something, it turns blue skies gray. It's just a dreary, dark feeling. And it's why there's plenty of images of Batman sitting on a gargoyle with the rain pouring down, people in dark clothes and umbrellas or newspapers trying to hold it over their heads, rushing from building to building, and the criminal underworld using that opportunity, that in a way like a fog, like at night, where evil lurks and goodly peoples hide out in their homes. And it's also, rain is one of these things that continuing with the mood factor, is that it in I don't want to compare it to the actual psychological depression, but it does cast a dark pallor over many activities. And essentially because rain is annoying. It can get in your shoes. It drips on things. It ruins reading materials. It soaks clothing. It can, if it's not dealt with, if you have a darkness and warmth, it creates mold. And just in general, people don't like it, especially if you are fully clothed, because then it soaks all of your clothing and you have to dry that out. It tends to pool in low areas. And so rain is a great way to create mood by describing how other people are reacting to it and what they are doing. Even if you're playing a medieval to a modern to a sci-fi setting, rain tends to distract people. Guards tend to stay in their guard huts. Police officers will tend to run back to their cars and stay inside of their cars with the defrost or the heater on instead of doing a foot patrol. Families that are, walking their pets or their kids will quickly rush back to home. Rain is a great tool to create a mood, but also it is a physical thing, right? So torrential rain can limit visibility. And I understand when I start talking about these third pillar things, I usually refer to it as it's the perfect tool to use as a puzzle, a trap, a lair, and an obstacle. As a puzzle, the environment is it's like a problem that needs to be solved, but you don't have to come up with the answer as the game master. Um, meaning that you create a problem and the players create the solution. And using the environment, of course, allows some players to shine, and then it causes problems for others. So rain can limit visibility. You may, on a normal bright day, see up to 3 miles. In torrential rain, your visibility might be limited to 60 feet, 100 feet, 300 feet. And therefore, enemies, objectives, obstacles may not be seen from a particular distance. I say this because, especially in fifth edition, um, an important part of spell casting is a few words, and those words will be something like an enemy or a target, an adversary or an ally that you can see within range. So if it's downpouring and one of your allies is greater than 60 feet away, and you as the dungeon master or game master say, well, your visibility range is limited to 60 feet, there may not be ability for you to use like a healing word or some other spell effect, a bless or something, if you cannot see them where they're at. That's a very important thing, and it's a subtlety, but it's a great way to add more complications in the game, especially if the the party members, the allies, are all looking for each other. Someone is injured or down, and another player character doesn't know. Also, with rain and torrential storms, along with visibility having a limitation, there's also a limitation on sound. Can someone hear you? Can you hear an ally or an enemy go down from a shot in the chest with an arrow, or being blasted by a magic missile? Maybe you charmed an ogre, but can the ogre hear you give it instructions if it's at a particular distance? Some spells require other people to hear you, such as like a thunder wave or something like that. And if it's already loud, is it is there some kind of mitigation on it? One technique I use is applying resistance to objects and people and targets universally, right? So if it's downpouring, does everybody have resistance to fire? You can apply that as a rule, you know. And of course, you're going to have your situation where players maybe you give this in your particular scenario, or maybe players are listening to this and they're thinking, well, oh, you're nerfing my character. I would take issue with that. I'm saying, here's a challenge. You don't have to be out in the rain. It doesn't rain all the time, and unless you're playing in a game world where there are no buildings and rain is just a factor 24/7, 365, then I would say no. You're being challenged, just as it would be any challenge to be in any other obstacle that I will describe shortly. Along with rain and the environment being like a puzzle, it also acts as a trap and a lair and an obstacle. Some creatures operate better in the rain. It is their prime environment to go hunting for, as a beast, to go hunting for prey. Or it could be they're using rain and storms as cover, and there's enemy goblinoids and they want to assault the an outpost from a large metropolitan city, and so they use the cover of rain to attack. And maybe the rain adds cover, it adds a benefit to those who want to operate during a thunderstorm or a major downpour. And so maybe as the game master, you offer half cover to those that are at a particular range, as the downpour makes it problematic to sling stones and shoot arrows and throw spears in this environment. Also, there's a possibility of rain acting as a trap of sorts, meaning that the rain creates conditions that make normally safe conditions unsafe. So you have yourselves a grassy knoll or a rocky hill that becomes very slippery. You have muddy streets as the rain starts to fill the streets and starts to mingle and moisten up that, the horse dung and the gravel, and now it starts to become muddy and slippery, and then therefore running down the streets or running down the open roads becomes this event where you make the wrong move, you misstep, you slip and fall. Also, it's a great way to add in the books I write with Critical Hit Publishing. In the cinematic environments, we have these tables called fumble crit tables, and they apply for those who roll a natural one and fumble their roll, or you make a critical hit and it affects the other person. How great would it be to strike an enemy, they go slipping and falling in the mud, maybe lose their weapon and become disarmed. Someone drops a book or a scroll or a potion, or maybe an alchemist is about to throw like alchemist fire, and they drop it in the mud and lose sight of it, or it goes out. So rain also creates other conditions, like I was talking about mud. It creates limited visibility. It is a great foreshadow for other things. So mud can be used as a foreshadow for like flash floods, flooded chambers, thunderstorms, and those kind of things. The banks of a river can start to flow over. It can normally pristine waters can become flooded. Can become murky and muddy from dirt and runoff that fills it. And so now you have these other additional obstacles, and being able to foreshadow events for your players will prevent you from like springing it on them and making it something that they're not aware of, by describing the rain begin at the beginning of an encounter and then have it start to get worse and worse, where you may even want to have the chance that a thunderstorm, someone could get hit by lightning. You might want to make that pretty rare in a more gritty or realistic setting, but in an arcane, a more stylized, a more cinematic setting, why not go for the odd chance that someone may get hit by lightning? Getting struck by lightning is far less than 1%, but you could use a percentage chance to do that. Maybe increase that percentage if someone's wearing armor or carrying around metallic items. Maybe standing at the highest point in a region. And also with flash flooding, flash floods can wash people away. Even water flowing knee level or higher, waist level, that's raging, like a raging river or something like that, can knock people flat, can knock enemies away from each other, can push each other away. So imagine, if you will, it's very difficult to do in theater of the mind, I must say, but it's still possible. But imagine, if you will, a scenario where the allies have to trudge through waist deep water, and the enemy is trying to attack them. And the beginning of each round, each person must roll to see maybe a strength roll or dexterity or both, challenge to prevent being washed downstream. And each person may get separated by like 10 feet as they get washed 10 feet downstream. And so therefore enemies locked against each other might start to flow away from each other, or maybe even bump into someone that you may not want to bump into as you're having a fight during in the waters of a raging river. Also, people can become very creative to avoid floodwaters and such, using a wooden door as a makeshift raft, or climbing into tree branches and then reaching down to grab their allies that are getting swept away because maybe they fumbled a roll or really missed a bad acrobatics check or a strength check to hold on. Floodwaters also have debris. Tree branches and things can flow through the water. Debris from dilapidated homes can crumble, and those things can also impact people, maybe trapping them underwater. An ankle gets caught. So, of course, all these things I'm creating in my head um, are possibilities. You can write your own table, maybe write down, 4, 6, 8 things, and then use a die roll. And if someone fails something, they encounter one of these things, you can use those in your games. Absolutely. Um, Torrential rains are great precursors to bigger and better and even worse things. Floodwaters. Player characters may go down into a wine cellar, a pit in the ground. Maybe they want to go fight, cultists or something like that. And so the floodwaters start to pour in, and now there's a time limit. Creating tension, creating pressure is a great tool in a DM's toolkit. And so you may want to add this pressure that, sure, you've been down there moments. The water that was just at your ankles now is up to your knees. Okay, now it's rising above your thighs and it's now at waist level. And of course, that depends on the height of the characters. So your shorter races, your halflings, your dwarves, your gnomes might have a little more of a threat when the floodwaters start pouring in, as opposed to your taller races, right? Your Goliath might be fine, but might have to split his or her attention from snatching up the halfling in one arm and the gnome riding on their back as the ancient crypt starts filling with water, and then now you feel a skeletal hand on an ankle, and you better beware. So yeah, rain itself can complicate so many things. In our present day, rain is complicating the events from a volcano as it spews ash. They say that is knee deep in some areas, and that ash that mixes with rain becomes this acidic and hot and poisonous sludge that just downpours. I used to call it brown down when I used Cyberpunk 2020, and man, that was many years ago. But anyway, not much more in the subject. I just want people to use the environment, use the third pillar, and of course the environment does not necessarily need to be natural. It's man-made. It is what is around you. It's the turned over table, it's swinging from the chandeliers, it's running across rooftops and running the streets and riding on horses and having a chase and being on storm-tossed ships and those kind of things. I just want people to use that third pillar. Talk about storm-tossed ships. You can do a foreshadow with some rain, and your player characters are sailing on ships and going from sailing around an archipelago, and now all of a sudden they have their the crew gets back on, they've got their treasure, they need to head home, and they've got to navigate a storm. Maybe they are besieged by an aquatic race or something that wants to board their ship, and so it complicates things as they're fighting merfolk or Sahuagin. I don't know, the lamprey humanoids that very few of us can pronounce correctly. A lizard folk or troglodytes or some other aquatic creature that you reskin, start boarding the ship, and then it becomes complicated because now they have to make rolls to remain stable, or when if they're on the storm-tossed ship, you roll a d4, and that's how many rounds it is before the ship starts to toss everyone, and it places disadvantage on all physical actions or something like that. You can always come up with ways to use and twist and abuse the rules to make things more dynamic, make them more exciting. So yeah, this one isn't going to be as long as my usual. If anyone has any, absolutely post any questions or comments or anything you got to say to me, for good or bad, put it in the chat if you would like. But yes, I am DBJ. I am your self-appointed third pillarist. I am the a contributing writer to Critical Hit Publishing, and my brainchild is Cinematic Environs, which talks about different kinds of environments like mountains or the Arctic, or even something more cinematic like aerial. We have deserts and blasted lands, which talks about volcanoes. We have a survival book in general, talks about surviving in all of these nasty environments. So anyway, there's even an aquatic book. But I digress. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for giving me your attention. I am live at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I don't know why I picked such a crazy time, except it was very hard to fit into the schedule. Just want to reach out to people, add to the community, just be a positive influence if I can. So yes, thank you very much, DBJ, and I'm out. Have a very good day, guys.